going to be starting out with an essay, which I think more people need to read. So we're going to read it. I've linked it around a few times. I've referenced it. But an essay called There is No Such Thing as a White Ally by Catherine Pugh. And so we're kind of going to be doing this, especially, I think, is poignant this month because it gets at the heart of the attitude towards allyship, and how it is the wrong framing, how it is a toxic, white-centric attitude and such. And I think that is a very relevant topic because, throughout this month, there's usually a very high quantity of, performative allyship. So, yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. As a forewarning, she doesn't pull punches. And she gives some of these warnings herself, but I will just say, if you find yourself getting upset with what's said in the essay, take a minute to question, is that because she's pointing out something that's true that you're uncomfortable with, or some other reason? Anyway. There is no such thing as a white ally. I never use the term white ally. This is, again, we're reading her words. I never use the term white ally when I talk with friends and family. Family and friends. That's because I detest it. Little twang of dissonance echoes every time it comes my way. My rage is not directed at the name, but its attending mentality. And the sobriquet itself implicates one of the most insidious sleights of hand in mankind's history. The logic behind the expression white ally makes about as much sense as me going into your room, folding your affirmations and putting them neatly away, cleaning all of the introspection off of your mirror, gathering your feelings for the laundry, and then picking up your gollywog, put it away, and announce triumphantly, we're in this together and I am totally committed to helping. Not so much with that. In my circles, black or white, family or friend, I rarely discuss my rejection of the white ally label's underpinnings. I'm hugely ambivalent about doing so and have been for years. Why hurt people you love who are fighting very hard to do a really important thing? Well, because black folks are dying as we sustain this illusion. Dying for a factual impossibility. Let me repeat that. Insulating you from feeling horrible is killing us. Saying it's not personal sounds ridiculous, but as it relates to you, it's not. As it relates to anyone who looks like me, it's the very essence of personal. And while I can live with your inner strife, I cannot live with black skin as a probable cause. I cannot live with my son being hunted. In a way, that has never been more clear. The nation insists on paying for this lunacy of logic with the lives of black men and women. There's nowhere left to even hide our babies. I will fight to the finish for my children, and I am not special. We all will fight for every brown baby. So listen carefully. We are done dying on our knees. If the white ally pseudonym must fall, then fall it will. Let us say our farewells here with grace, then. If the very idea of what's coming makes you feel attacked, I get that. That's fair. You're gonna want to pace yourself, though. This is just the preamble. Water gets choppier up ahead. I will say this, however. I am viciously allergic to centering a discussion about me around someone who is not me. So I will say this only once and only here. I know amazing people across the entire spectrum of the human experience. People who are good and who do good in profound and genuine ways. There's no avoiding the discomfort around what we are going to contemplate. Know that I love you deeply. Know that I do not do this casually. And should it reach a point where it is too uncomfortable for you, know that I am doing this anyway. Just real briefly, like this whole paragraph is basically the response to why the same question she asked up above, which is why hurt people who are ostensibly trying to help. And it's because, well, I mean, she'll get into the meat of it, but basically the way that help is being framed and delivered is causing more problems than it's mitigating. And she knows this. This is not about nomenclature. This is not about contribution. It's not about your heart or your hard work or your good deeds. This is about, and only about, the damage behind defining as help a thing that is your duty. Because racism is not mine, it is yours. What you do is not called help when it is your mess we're cleaning. Again, the essay is written in a first-person perspective. I am one of the many people that is the you that she's referring to here. I just am reading it as it's written. Also, just real briefly, this paragraph is kind of hinting at the Malcolm X quote about healing, that if you stab someone in the back, you're not helping when you've pulled the knife halfway out. You're not helping when you've pulled the knife entirely out. You're only helping when the wound is actually being healed. You're the one healing it, or at least playing a part in healing it. And in microcosm, that quote is what this whole essay is about. But yeah, get into it further. Racism is not ours. It is yours, and it's yours exclusively. Black folks did not build black hate, and we certainly did not build it with you. Black folks are not the bad actor in black hate. We can only work to convince the bad actor to stop acting badly. Black folks cannot kill black hate in its cradle. Black hate breeds in places we cannot reach. If we could have killed it, we would have killed it. Trust that it is not our apathy about our own lives that keeps us dying in the streets. Worse, racism disappears when we try to look it in the eye, lost in a sea of nonsensical protestations. I don't see color. Why are we talking about racism then? I'm not racist. Okay, whatever it is you call this, you're still getting fired for it. I have black friends. Me too. Go figure. Property destruction isn't the way. Just pretend it's black, then it won't bother either of us. Stop spreading the hate. Stop giving it to me. Racism goes both ways. Yeah, I don't follow. All lives matter. Not so much. If all lives mattered, you wouldn't still be in that chair. All requires more engagement, not less, because stupid isn't really how math works here. And of course, you know, we've all seen these phrases around. I'll pause on one of these actually, because most of these don't hang out in leftist circles. But this one still creeps in weird ways. I still see people who insist that, the fight against systemic oppression is somehow racist against white people. And I still see people who insist that if somehow we stop talking about race and racism and only focus on like the economic aspects and class aspects, that somehow that'll magically fix the racism. And sure, there's value in working on the class aspects. That doesn't make the racism go away. If you make things good for the working class, but make it better for some of the working class because systemic biases exist along racial lines, you haven't really fixed the problem. And yeah. Anyway. And while this back and forth can be quite entertaining, it's almost never productive. Black folks cannot reach this race hate, cannot catch this race hate, cannot kill this race hate. But there you are, insisting that you do not see this race hate in your home, at your job, or among your family and friends. Yet it must be hiding over there somewhere. Think about it. Race hate has not just survived, it's thrived. It had to thrive to endure for centuries and still feel shiny and new, and it's not invisible, not silent, not odorless, not stealthy. And it sure the hell is not hiding over here. The call really is coming from inside your house, behind a door to which black folks have never had the key. Seriously. This paragraph is getting at something that I also do see, and something which I used to grapple with myself, but now have come firmly on her side of this, which is sometimes you kind of just try and avoid talking politics or avoid like getting into the views that other people around you have, especially as a white person, so that you can keep peace with them and maintain friendships with them, or stay in a community, or, whatever it is. And that doesn't cut it. That doesn't cut it for, anymore. Like, that is what she's saying here. That is basically giving cover for that sort of bigotry to exist. If you have a real relationship with someone, whether it's, romantic or professional or platonic or what have you, and if you can't talk about some things because you're afraid that you might find out something about them that you don't like, then you really should question how much that is worth to you versus the harm that it is doing societally. Now, in some professional settings, it's actually difficult because, like, okay, you do have to pay your bills, and if you are being under the employ of shitheels, which, let's face it, most business owners and managers and stuff under capitalism are going to be sociopathic shitheels that absolutely don't care about anyone except their wallet. Yeah, that is the reality of capitalism, and it's part of a broader thing that I want to talk about sometime, which is I am increasingly convinced that the nature of capitalism, because it is technically zero-sum game, it incentivizes creating divisions along racial or religious or other immutable lines. Like, there is a baked-in incentive to other outside, groups outside of your community, because if you can somehow keep a swath of people down, mathematically, you improve the odds for yourself and your ancestors and your friends to succeed. And yeah, I'm still getting my head around that. It's something I've been thinking about. But anyway, continuing on. Risk and harm meet. He who owns the problem is more driven to find the cure. This is not about blame. This is about ownership. A person holds one state of mind when she is at risk, and another when someone close to her is. Facing the former, she makes proactive choices to lessen her risk. Facing the latter, she makes reactive choices to lessen the other person's harm. Her risk is anticipatory, and their harm has already come to pass. There are two people in play here, but the actions belong to just one. When risk and harm converge in the actor owns her kerfuffle. As the owner and the one now at risk, she ditches the let me know if this is a problem passenger seat and takes the this is what I'm not doing wrong today wheel. She owns her duty and she owns her risk, and thus she drives the cure like she's in an Indy. And that, not coincidentally, is the beginning of racism's end. Self-preservation changes everything. This series of paragraphs, it may take a little bit for it to make sense. We might come back to it, but the framing of it, she's setting up kind of a mental rhetorical device for how to start thinking more proactively about confronting biases and racism, not just in ourselves, but as we perceive it and stuff. New to the channel, been listening for the past 15 minutes. I think the annoying thing that annoys you is anytime there's a disparity between groups of people, it is assumed it is because of discrimination and other effects that could be affecting like individual choice. It's ignored. White people are assumed to be racist when it's not clear what they have done individually to anyone. Sure. So, yes, white people are broadly assumed to be racist because, at least in, I'm speaking from a American perspective, but this is also true in a lot of Europe. White people do hold the systemic power, strictly speaking. They may not be, actively or even consciously perpetuating racism. But there are a lot of things that white people do which give cover to and allow racism to thrive. And that's really what this article is getting at. is about actually being proactive. And if you are, then, you know, you would not take offense to anything written here. But yeah, the systems of power that perpetuate racism exist and can only exist because white people don't break them down. The people who are being oppressed don't actually hold the power to break that cycle of oppression. So yeah. All right, keep listening. It's good. All right. She goes on. We are not in this together. Racism is yours, and we are not in this together in the way that you tell yourself we are. Let me rephrase that. I don't know who the we is in we are in this together. I'm pretty stumped by the in, the this, and the together too, come to think of it. I know what we all pretend this means. We share a burden. But really we don't. The most egregious parts of the burden are impossible to share and impossible to shed. Look at your horse. Her back is straight, her canter is frisky. She faces each glorious day like the gift it is. Now look at my horse. My nag, really. Back is not just bent, it is just this side of broken. Her pace is slow when she moves at all. Some days she trots. Most, though, she just starts and stops. Your filly with her unencumbered back is glorious. My faithful nag, bowed by centuries of baggage, is all but dead. And progress here is slow going because my nag is pulling the cart your mare is sitting in. That's not we, that's me. I can hear you now. What do you mean we have no horse in this race? Focus. There's two races at play here. Like the oncologist, you have no horse in your patient's race. But you're riding a thoroughbred in the race for the cure. I'm really going to need you to dig in here, folks. Yes, you grieve. Yes, you rend and gnash. You shout down an aunt, block a racist neighbor, help your local Archie bunker find his Jesus. When you rest your head at night, you do so fairly confident the police won't kill you. And when it's too much for you, you turn off the TV or close your browser and give that pain some space. I, too, shout down your aunt, black Twitter your neighbor, and hide in the cut for Archie, who is without a doubt avoiding me. But when I rest my head at night, it is always with one eye open. And when it's too much for me, I must still don my armor. I must still sprint to the front line. I must still form an impenetrable wall of I wish a motherfucker would to protect my children, my sisters, and my men. Hey, Cordy. Going over an essay. Welcome on in. Now you are free to exhale, and now I can no longer breathe. In the end, you are still alive, and in the end, there is no we in me. Racism is yours, and the fact that black folks are dying still does not make it our thing. One, it is not ours. At the end of the day, black folks are almost always the ones dead. Two, it's not our thing. The fact that we do not want to die and you should not kill us does not mean we co-own whatever it is that's going on here. Black folks' deaths do not vest us with shared ownership. Much in the same way, the survivor of an attempted murder does not share ownership of her would-be killer's crime. Of course, it is in our interest to get in front of this. Let us deal with that. With the attempted murder, your crime, your time, and we are not partners there. Okay, I mean, you can return to illiteracy, that's fine. Racism is yours, and you keep sticking me with the bill. You benefit from racism, uh, but I am burdened by it, like an expensive all-you-can-eat buffet where you gorge yourself while I have yet to eat. You can deep dive into the pasta and pass on the carrots and peas. You can pick what you want, ignore what you don't, and leave when you're finished. Sometimes I can see the food that I'm not allowed to touch, but I am not permitted to leave the joint until I've paid both bills. I pay with my life, pay with my limbs, I pay with what even the most random of persons can hunt me down for and take from me. Pay and pay and pay, and still there is no we. I shaved my head for a charity event a while back, but it's been growing back. Racism is yours, and saying you are colorblind is not helping anyone. It's not helping you, it's not helping me. First, you do see color. Yeah, you really do. Yeah, you really, really do. More to the point, I don't see color has always been such an odd olive branch of relatability. Odd because it is untrue, odd because of its dissonance. Its actual meaning is the opposite of its intended meaning. Odd because those tropists seem to miss, in their private teachable moments, the huge reveal colorblind brings with it. Boop. Oh, I understand its purpose. Believe me, we all do. We're just being nice when we let you explain it to us for the 5011th time this week. At the risk of landing on the wrong side of humble, I am not, shall we say, untutored. I do not strike even the most casual of observers as lacking emotional literacy. But even if I were both dumb and tone deaf, this isn't the utility of the superconducting supercollider we're contemplating here. The speaker of the phrase, I don't see color, aims for, I respect you, I accept you as a person, and I do so with no judgment. The person lands on, I do not consider your race so that I do not judge you. The speaker drives right past, seeing your race triggers me to say I do not see your race, which I must erase so as not to judge you. This is a fascinating deconstruction. And before I had read this, like, I knew that colorblindness really was not helping, but this framing really articulates why. Glad to hear it, Guy. Really articulates why the phrase doesn't make sense and why it doesn't help. And because, yeah, if you do feel compelled to say, you know, that you're colorblind, and if that's your reflex, you're basically admitting that there is judgment there, but you're actively trying to suppress it. Which, sure, that's a start, but it hasn't actually addressed those implicit biases. They're still very, very much alive. And otherwise, you would be able to just accept the person as they are without insisting that you don't perceive their race. If someone is well, sure, yeah, but there's This is a little different, though, because this isn't even being accused of being, this isn't even someone being accused of racism. This is someone who insists that they don't see color when they're talking about um, how they view people in the world, um, which is a very, very common attitude and is, in fact, the attitude coming out of the 60s and 70s, which ultimately led to the creation of critical race theory. It's one of the attitudes where they said, now, hold on a minute, this colorblindness stuff makes it so that we actually can't assess systemically what's going on here. And there are systemic issues that are along racial lines. In the legal system. But yeah. 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 Saying there's no problem here is sus, yeah. Is yeah, that's basically what it is. I know that you employ this phrase because you fear that we judge you and you find you lacking. Okay, we judge you. Good call. So here's a pro tip. If you center around you, a thing you are doing for me, you're doing it wrong. If this is just for me, you need only convey in one word or deed, I respect you, and leave it there. You don't, of course. You keep speaking. Yet you do so without the knowledge you are talking to yourself, about yourself, and for yourself. You don't really need us for your pep talk, darling. For this, there is definitely no we. In fact, for this, the we is all you and none of me. This is another problem with the saying to someone else, I am, I don't see color or whatever. It is, it is again a subtle admission that you're trying to play to what you think they may want, but it really is more about you saying to yourself, I don't have implicit biases. I will admit that I do. I was raised in them. I work very hard to... I have worked very hard to drop them and shed them as much as possible and continue to introspect anytime I feel them surface. But whoever the target of my biases are, I don't need to convey that to them. And that's a problem that I need to work on in me. I don't need their approval on that. And like if I did seek their approval, it would really be for my benefit. And that's really a weird dynamic, right? Racism is yours, and leaving us to carry your water is not what good men do. I raise this last because it hits me hardest and leaves me no room for banter. In no other venue of the modern American experience is the target charged to end the abuse. Corner any black person and they'll rattle a racism rap sheet with disturbing ease. Yet our national plan for race relations conditions our survival on our ability to convince our rapists to rape us no more. This is getting to the heart of the, which is saying where white people do hold the power in this to actually resolve the systems of racial oppression that exist. And the most that like black people can do is try and raise the awareness for it, but they've been doing that for hundreds of years, like for ages. It hasn't been fixed. Hey Bink, how are you doing? Yeah, it's that is a statement. I love this essay so much. It's some truth. um You look us in the eye with a clear conscience and an untroubled soul and say, "Let me teach you how to teach me not to rape you. No, not now. I'll tell you when I'm ready. Comfort me first so that I can hear your lesson. And the lesson ends when I feel like a bad person. And understand that if I don't get it, you'll just have to try harder until I do. Now lay back, close your eyes. This won't hurt a bit. And if it does, never forget that it is your fault that I still do what I do." This paragraph here is really disturbing, and it should be read as disturbing, but it also is 100% a parallel of how a lot of white people talk about racial oppression, and especially push back against the oppressed on racial oppression. You had in class about this, it was white consciousness versus black consciousness and the relationship between the two. Yeah. I say this again, this is not what good people do. You're done breathing your cancer into my lungs. I will shepherd your humanity no more. Racism is yours, no, not mine, and I return your chains to you here, my friend. On the rare occasions when I discuss the fallacy of the white ally, the most common question I get is, if not white ally, always with the caps, what do we call white folks who go at racism with both barrels? People? Good people? It would seem that my sarcasm is less than illuminating. I have learned instead to answer that question with one of my own. What do we call cops who fight against police brutality with every fiber of their being? Bastards. We call them bastards. But, yeah. Right. I get the visceral dissonance on both sides of the equation. Well, dissonance matters. This whole thing demands not an enormous paradigm shift, but a complete paradigm schism, where the only model of race relations, read race abuse, we've ever known. This thing we have always done to frame an extraordinarily good thing in an extraordinarily bad way has been 400 years in the making. But I think the world is speaking to us right now, don't you? I also think it's time we listen. The death of our perilous self-deception is finally at hand. Ability. You are not helping me. Are we crowdsourcing accountability for black hate, insisting you share your brother's scorn? Do we suggest white folks are interchangeable, answerable for the crimes of any bad actor, and name you the ambassador for all? Don't be ridiculous. That's not our team, that's yours. Stop projecting. We're not stupid or even spiteful, nor do we act from that weirdly altruistic Stephen King thing of black folks who use their mystical shining powers to help white folk. And as my fire and brimstone Shiro said just days ago, be content. It is not revenge we seek. It's simply a matter of self-preservation. Making you Bubba's crime proxy leaves his threat free to roam the streets. Nothing about that is of any value to anyone here. So no, you're not vicariously liable for the acts of strangers, your clan, or your kin. you like that, Bink? Yeah. Twitch. What? What did Twitch do? Oh. I don't know what Twitch did. Okay. Projection. Seems fine. Okay. Deal with them as I assume we all do. Shepherd from risk those who matter to you. Don't you worry, we'll handle Bubba. You just pay attention to your game here. You are singularly and directly liable for your acts. And given how it's not exactly uncommon for your folk to trip over a racist rock and fall into a racist puddle, that alone should scare you enough to keep you busy. Still unsure? Here are hundreds of examples of what I like to call I'm Not Your Grandma's Season 1, 2, and 3. Have a look to up on things that are taboo. Oprah's internet has volumes of white ally guides. Becoming an anti-racist white ally, the challenges of becoming a white ally, guidelines for being a strong white ally, becoming a trustworthy white ally, and my all-time favorite, the White Ally Playbook. Really, though? Really? Here's my book. Stop being racist. Get your people, too. That's it. That's the whole book. Available for 2 easy payments of 20 acres and half a mule. Yeah, Drew. But it needs to be very incisive about that individual agency. And she does get into it a little bit further down, but like there are cases of people who I have seen it in some circles where there's not circles I hang out in once I see this sort of shit, but people who are like, oh, well, you know, this person keeps going on, you know, this black person keeps going on and on about race and, you know, was calling out white people and all this stuff. So, you know, I don't care anymore about Black Lives Matter or whatever. Or, there were several cases actually in the protests themselves in 2020 where white folks tried to kind of hijack the protest movement itself, and the microphones and stuff, and actually like got upset when black people tried to recenter it around their own voices. Some of them walked out of the protest because of that. And in that sort of case, that's someone who is being performatively a white ally for their own sake, for their own feelings, their own benefit, and not actually because they believe in breaking down racism. Like, if your commitment to breaking down racism is conditional on those who are oppressed acting a certain way or catering to your feelings in a certain way, that's not commitment to breaking down racism. That's just trying to figure out how to make the systems of oppression actually like uplift you. everyone wants to be here and not everyone wants to do the things required to be a hero. Yeah, some of that. It's some of that. But there are things you can do, and not ignoring it when you see it around you is one of those things. And that can be very uncomfortable, because that can put you at odds with your friend, sometimes your best friend, can put you at odds with family, etc. But if we want to break down racial oppression, we can't let it hide in our backyards. We can't let it just skate under the couch because it might hurt someone that we care about. It's on us to control our own behavior, but also to challenge those around us, because those around us who have those bigoted sentiments, they're people that, though, if they're holding on to those racist sentiments, then those who are the subject of those racist sentiments, there's no chance they can reach that person. But we might be able to, and if we can't, we can definitely cut them loose from our lives and not create space for them. It's a thought. I also really like her 20 acres and a mule that just kind of skates in there. Or 20 acres. This is the 40 acres and a full mule, 2 easy payments. Consequences. You are helping you. A shift in liability brings with it a shift in consequences. I like my mother's approach here. My mom would always tell my brother and me, fine, whatever, just me. I'm not the boss of your choices. The boss there is you. I am the boss of consequences, though, and I will always come when you call for me. And when the boss of consequences comes, things just might get ugly. He might strip you of everything you own. He might take your house, your car, your career, your integrity, your reputation, and your self-respect. He might take your inheritance and your future estate. He might drag you into court and drain your coffers. He might eviscerate any chance of a future by making your name synonymous with hate and inhumanity. You can keep your monogrammed towels, he will say, but that legacy is all mine. Or you could just not be racist. My husband is a Marine, and this is what he loves to call a self-correcting error. Harsh? You bet. Intentionally so. What good is a consequence that is a gentle entreaty? Again, there is an excellent solution here. Racist you could just not be. If you're not being racist, no one's going to come looking for you. Blacks have neither the time for nor the interest in dragging people minding their business out of their lane and into ours. Our plates are full with actual racists. Nobody here is manufacturing anything special for you, okay? We will no longer curate your humanity for our protection. It makes better sense to curate it for yours. Put in everyday terms, I do not teach my son to respect women to protect your daughter. I teach my son to respect women to protect my son. Returning the consequence of race abuse to the lap of the race abuser is the beginning of the end. The motivation to learn about racism becomes profound. The personal investment to avoid racism reaps a richer bounty. The urgency to end racism comes in sharp relief. It's like that old black spiritual, when your skin is in the game, the entire game changes. When I've alluded to this essay in the past, what I've called this is a shifting of the Overton window in concept. So currently in concept, the Overton window is racism is the standard, And to be exceptional, you act as a white ally over here. What this reframing does is says, this over here is normal behavior. This is the behavior of good and decent people. What we currently, or what a lot of people currently call white allies. And that makes that everyone who falls outside of that a racist shitheel who should be called out for being a racist shitheel. So basically, rather than making, people who are opposed to racism the exception, we should instead make people who hold on to racism or who ignore it, who are just kind of tacitly fine with it, the exception, and treat them as aberrant. And that's a much more productive attitude. Right? Hope that makes sense. That is why there cannot be a white ally. That is why we should and must abandon the fallacy. Find the lie. I'm waiting. An addendum. Patrick Hutchinson, the true story of a black warrior. Patrick Hutchinson is a father and a grandfather, demanding a better world for his clan and kin. That world starts with the most basic of rights, that is, the right to live. Friends warned Patrick that hate groups would interfere with a Black Lives Matter protest he was attending, but that was of no consequence to him. After all, what risk is agitation to a man who consumes a daily diet of death? Naturally, of course, a racist thug started a fire of race hate, provoking the very catching of hands he received. Patrick saw the hate-mongering then, curled up and tight, Patrick saw the hate-monger then, curled up and tight, lying on the stairs in a fetal position. Let's see. I feel like a lot of activism amounts to contributing only in token ways instead of changing individual actions. Yeah. There is a lot of very token efforts in a lot of activist spaces. Why I try, when, to the extent I can, to whip people to find communities and, mutual aid communities and support networks and stuff that they can get their hands dirty with if they are able to. Let me show on this picture for a moment. Patrick here, carrying a injured man away after he was allegedly attacked. Continuing on. Our Black Father did not pause and ran into the fire to save this purveyor of hate. Into the fire, stoked by hunger to destroy everything Patrick finds dear. And still, he moved towards the danger. Our Black grandfather scooped that man up and marched for yet another fire still. And just like the white flames behind him, the blue flames before him would torch Patrick for the crime of his black skin. And still he moved towards the danger. Beaten from his aft, and with the police at his fore, Patrick never faltered, never strayed, never retreated. He abandoned his entreaty for his own humanity and stepped in to save all of yours. He never even paused at his own risk, despite knowing none of you would save him. The only one at risk from fires he had no hand in. While that may escape the notice of some, it is lost on no black person in the universe. Not one. If you understood nothing else about what I've written here, understand this. Patrick cannot offer his life as payment for the privilege of protecting you from yourselves, and his life is not owed to the men who threaten the lives of his children, his clan, his kin. Black lives are your currency no longer. It is okay now, Black Warrior. You can put him down, good friend. You needn't move toward the fire. His burden is your burden. Never again. So, yeah. Catechisms of race engagement. An interesting little 10 bullet points at the end here. Everyone has a voice. Every voice doesn't get a mic. This first one is a really important one, especially with a lot of the shit that I've been seeing on Twitch lately. There's a lot of people who are like comfortable talking to, platforming, putting a microphone in front of just openly hateful people with the theoretical intent of like dunking on them. That's not helping anyone. It is not helping anyone. There is exactly 0 lives saved by putting a microphone in front of someone who thinks that racial hierarchy is a thing. And to be chummy with such people because it drives clicks and brings you an audience is, well, let's just say call it what it is. It's taking racial oppression that exists and finding a way to profit off of it. Like, that's what it is. I find that disturbing and gross. Your reaction does not equal my objective. Your reaction and our fight for life are also not equal. I won't promote your reaction over our struggle. These 3 here are all about people who, especially white people, who center their feelings and discomfort around the way that systemic racism is discussed, and are more concerned with how white people are framed in that power dynamic rather than centering on fixing the problem. I'm aware that I am Rata, and I'm highlighting the fact that whatever my feelings are in this matter a whole lot less than the lives lost to systemic oppression. That's also a good question, Drew. It could be taken either way. I could see it taken as that some people can't be heard even if they should be because they don't get a mic. My initial reading of it was that some people should just not be listened to. But I could see it both ways. That's another interpretation. Number 5, it never ends well to suggest even implicitly that I should, is tied to 2, 3, 4. 6, calling this helping when you help hear me or asking or saying ask me nicely are admissions. You check your heart and mind. Who you help here? Yeah. 4 centuries, babe. If this was easy, yeah. This is an important one too. A lot of people get, they say that they're, I'm just this person I don't think is even here. Like, I don't think there was any reason to say that, so I'm just going to go ahead and err on the side of goodbye. 4 centuries, babe, if this was easy, is, yeah. This one in particular makes me scratch my head anytime someone thinks that, like, some minor policy shift will just fix the problem. A lot of this demands drastic societal change, because racism and other forms of bigotry exist in very subtle ways. I mean, there's the overt ways as well, but they also exist in very subtle ways in so many aspects of our lives. And it's not until we recognize that and actively work to unravel that and try and bring up the next generation to reject those sorts of attitudes and biases and such. And then the next, it is going to be, if a silver bullet comes along, I will be cheering it on right then and there. But this is a generational thing, and it requires all hands on deck sort of thing. With black antipathy and eggs to omelets, except that you're an egg and not the omelet. Yeah. If you find yourself in here, it is because you see yourself in here, not because I do. 1 through 9 are why the white ally label is marketing. Good people need neither capes nor palm squads, my friend. Yeah. So yeah. That was There's No Such Thing as a White Ally by Catherine Pugh.